Go for show.
Beautiful. Good. not how we wanted to start that.
Perfect start. That's how I wanted to start it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 20th webinar. We've come such a long way with TM101, and it's been such a great experience getting to learn from everyone and to talk tour management every week. It's been such a pleasure. Yeah, so we are joined by Fitz Joy, and I'm going to pass that off to Henry, and we'll get things started.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so a wise man once said, the same wave that brings us up to greatness also brings us crashing back down to the bottom. Everyone that's toured and lived a life knows what that means and how much that ride costs. So today we're joined by a colleague of ours that has certainly reached high points in this industry, working with acts like Katy Perry and Shakira, but also knows firsthand what it means to deal with addiction, tragedy, and the pursuit of happiness. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Fitzjoy Hellin.
Hey, nice to see y'all. Thanks for joining. So yeah, where do we start? You know, it's just really just a little bit of a story of her life, you know, like that, never really planned, but just happened and unfolded as he just did. And here we are, you know, 32 years later. You know, I started my my music journey fairly early, being a punk rock kid, built out of rejection from parents, you know, or rejecting the parents and the system and whatnot. So like I was into punk rock music, and I joined a few organizations helping them set up punk shows, mostly American and British punk bands, hardcore bands, traveling throughout Europe, and giving them a place to perform, you know, whether that was like in a 50 capacity or a 200-300 capacity. And you know, when everything else failed in life, like I just had an opportunity to jump in a van one day with a punk band that came through, and you know, got along with one of the guys. So why don't you join us and help us out? And I did. And this was like a early late spring in somewhere in like 1988. Went on
Where was it you grew up, Fitzjoy? Can you tell everyone?
Sorry?
Where was it you grew up?
So I grew up in Europe, in Belgium, just on the outskirts of Brussels. You know, just when we drive outside the town and you see the first cows, that's where I grew up. Yeah, and yeah, I wasn't a big fan of school and whatnot. I like to venture a lot, you know, even as a young teenager, escape a lot. Yeah. My first escape from home at 13. Needless to say, like by the age of 15, 16, I would hitchhike weekends to Amsterdam and go see punk bands play in squats, yeah, Van Hall squats. So I was a little distracted from like what parents wanted me to do and what studies were directed me to. So when I had the opportunity to jump in a van and I took the opportunity. It's just like, let's see what's out there. Let's see what life has to offer. And shortly after, I ended up in Italy. This punk band, like I was supporting another punk band from New York, and they lived in Pisa. And after tours, like, where do I go? Like, well, we have a squad here in Pisa. Just like, why don't you spend the summer here? It's like, and so we went, right? Summer in Pisa, and in the squats, no money. Living poorly. Got into also helping out, setting up shows in the squat over there. Punk bands, epitaph punk bands, you know, Brat Religion and whatnot came through there. Felt a calling to get back on the road. How do I get back on the road? You know, so hanging out in Pisa, Italy is not quite the place to get started. So I decided to make my way back to Amsterdam. To the squat where I knew a lot of, it was a squat like mostly squatted by Italians. But like there was a promoter there called Sid. He was from Italy. He had a punk band, and he and his Canadian girlfriend would bring out bring over all these American punk bands, hardcore bands, punk bands from New York, from California. So like I went and hang out with them for a little while until they sent me on the tour, you know, and I got my first my second tour then, just hanging out, you know, just hanging out. I guess I used to be pretty quiet, but that like going with the flow, and that like appeals to many people, you know, just having somebody there helping out, being quiet, not voicing too much of an opinion, you know.
So Fitzjoy,
And, yeah.
how many different countries have you lived in, and how many different languages do you speak?
So yeah, that was an advantage for me right away. I grew up in Belgium. My mom is Dutch. My dad is Flemish. So I grew up right away in a bilingual community: Flemish, Dutch, and French. So there was already 3 languages I had by 6. My dad's in the French Boy Scouts when I was 6. So it's 3 languages right away there. And when I was 17, I escaped to Italy for a little bit, and then eventually at 19, with the first band, I ended up there for a while. So I learned Italian. Lived there, then eventually ended up moving there, and I lived in Pisa, Parma, and Bologna for about 4 or 5 years. And then from there, as touring became a thing for me, I had a family in Italy that took me in their house and like, what do you want to do with your life? You know, it's like, I want to tour, and I think like if I would have a van, a shitty van, I can get these punk bands to drive these punk bands around Europe. I can just pick them up from the airport and drive them around. They don't have money for like fancy AVs rental vans, you know. And so you know, they took me in, put me to work, and I lived with them for a year. And the result was a old shitty Ford Transit van. They bought me, and I fixed it up. And a year later, here you go, me in a purple Ford Transit extended cab, you know. and by then I had befriended like promoters in Berlin that would bring over all these American hardcore band, punk bands, and they could always use like a little hand. So I joined their team, and here I went off for the next 3-4 years, just picking up like punk bands in out of Berlin. The agency was out of Berlin, mostly picking up bands in Amsterdam or Frankfurt, and then guiding them around Europe. At the time, Europe was a different place. You know, currencies in every single country. Every like 6-7 hours you drove, there was a different country, a different currency, a different language. There was borders to cross. And crossing with the political punk bands at the time was also like, you know, not the easiest thing sometimes. A lot of times you would get stopped and would get searched, just like the Canadian border here, you know, like here they search for drugs, over there they search for like, you know, terrorists and whatnot. And so, yeah, that became my life. I lived in Italy. Eventually I moved to Bologna, moved in with a girlfriend, and became part of a also weird little underground hip hop scene in Bologna. And while I was in Italy at home without a tour, I would start touring these Italian rap artists over the weekends to clubs like in Naples and Rome and Torino. And then when I would get a tour, I would just like either get on a train or get my own van and drive to wherever they told me to pick up this band, and off we went, you know. And these were days without cell phones, without computers, without even the fax. Like fax machines. It was the very beginning of the fax machines, I believe. And we're talking now. We're like in you know, this is 89 to about 93. I also was able to get into a sound engineering school in Bologna for a year. And then I took those skills and applied them to offering my engineering service to these punk bands, which mostly meant like bringing up like shitty club sound systems and whatnot. But that's how I learned. And then, yeah, slowly the bands become a little bit more popular. Punk music became like a little bit more the norm. And then in 93, 94, all of a sudden like bands like Green Day and The Offspring and Rancid bloomed, you know. And I was so lucky to, at that time, mostly touring with all the active bands, the smaller bands, the Yes and the Fuse, and the Lag Wagons, and Face to Face, and you name them, you know. Dave Pollock from Destiny agency, punk agency in Berlin, American, living in Berlin, entrusted me with a band called The Offspring that had just blown up here in the US. And they had money for a bus, you know, like one of the first tour buses, you know, it was a Prima Klima bus in Berlin, just basically a regular tourist bus, seats thrown out, bunk beds put in, and my first bus tour, or my second bus tour maybe. Yeah, but second bus tour, because I had also been a backline tech for War, and like ended up on the 18 bunk English tour bus. And I thought I was a king. And when I got first on that bus, you know, there was no air conditioning. It was like the hottest summer ever. No ice in Europe, and all these Americans want their fancy ice for the Coca-Cola. You know, where do you find ice in Germany? You know, in the middle of the summer, like 20, 30 years ago. It was fancy for me.
Fitzjoy, you and I's early part of our careers started in very similar manners, albeit 20 years apart. You know, I was also in Europe. I also bought a van and started on that path that way. And it's what a lot of tour managers in Europe do, because the culture of touring is different there. And the opportunity to work with a lot of US artists coming over to Europe for the first time is ample. And that's a good way to progress your career. You said something yesterday that really resonated with me. And you said, in the early days, the job was a lifestyle. And that really, could you explain a little bit about first of all, what it's like touring at that, what some people describe the toilet touring level, you know, 5 guys in a van. And secondly, do you think that's informed how you've gone on further in your career when, you know, because there's a lot of people in this industry who start at a much higher rung on the ladder. Do you think it's given you a different perspective on that? So a 2-part question, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it was really growing from zero, from nothing. Like in the beginning, there was no like negotiating salaries. There was no job interviews. You know, you just like, here's the band, pick up the band, here's your itinerary, and like it was like, oh shit, you know, like, and then like, where are we going? All right, like what city maps do I need? What countries are we going to? What currency do I need? What coins for that telephone machine do I need? You know. And then also, like, you know, we're Europeans, like drinking is part of our culture too. So it wasn't really a healthy lifestyle per se, you know. We had no money for healthy eating at all. I was a vegetarian, like growing up since I was 14. I had to give up that vegetarianism because like touring in Germany or Spain, you know, with no money, you just like, get fat whatever you get fat, you eat whatever you get fat, you know, like, and the only comfort there is really like the alcohol you get, you know. So and a lot of times too, like sleeping, like, you know, where do we sleep? It was not something that we planned or scheduled or demanded, like, or could demand. Like, it was like, where are we gonna sleep tonight? You know, anybody is offering us a place to stay. In Europe, a lot of people live with their parents, so like it's not just like here where like a lot of youngsters like actually live independently and have a home, you know. No, like it's like, so a lot of times we ended up crashing on the stage after the show, you know. And how do you do that? You know, like, you gotta be drunk. So it was like most of my 20s, I spent like drinking away, partying, and it was a lifestyle, you know. Never really planning ahead much. It's like, we had $200 and that was a full tank of gas, and let's make it to the next place where we get fed, and maybe we're lucky we find like somebody that's taking us up and a couple mattresses, you know, to sleep on. And next day, like you know, like you get a mission. You gotta get to this, you know, you gotta get from Milan to Paris, you know, like, let's go. Hangover or not, metabolism is slow in your 20s, or like pretty high in your 20s, so like you don't feel those hangovers much. So it was just like go, 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 go. There was no days off, and if there was a day off, it was like, you know, you were a tourist. You would show up like, you know, would find the club and show up maybe at 4 or 5 o'clock and make sure you knew where the the place was, and then like they tell you to come back at 6 or 7 or 8, so you walk a lot. And that was like the only healthy activity at the time, just walking around the town exploring while you were waiting for this club to open up so you could go set up and play your show. And then slowly it evolved into more like, hey, I was offered a guitar tech job for Gwar, a backline, and that was already more like bigger venues. Like they had like this 18-bunk bus and a truck, a truck for their gear because they had all this gear. But that was the first time that I really said, whoa, this is the job. Like I get up in the morning off my bus and right away like add so many guitars to clean. The Gar was a band that like spread blood all over the crowd, and it was like colored water. So everything got wet, all the gear got wet, and every single day you had to like change all the batteries out of all the pedals and whatnot, and change all the strings and clean guitars and then pack them up in plastic. So it was really like a 9 to 2 a.m. in the morning job. But it was just fascinating sitting on this bus, not having to drive anymore. That was like my first whoa, I'm making it. I made it.
Yeah, the feeling of accomplishment when you get on your first bus tour, having done years and years of van tours, is really something. I find that when I have nowadays, if I have crew complaining about, there's no crew room in this venue, or no, my room's right next to the elevator, I'm like, I find it really hard to detach myself from where we've come from, where I personally and a lot of other people in this industry have come from.
It was a personal lifestyle too, because you pick these guys up, and then within a week you're best friends and your camaraderie, and you're like that close, 5-6 people in a van, and you get a mission, and like nobody can touch you, and you're set apart from the rest of the world. And I even remember I had started like an SNFU tour, and I was in the middle of it, and Dave Paul called me. It's like, listen, you're one of my best guys I got. Like, we got Green Day coming over on the first European tour, and like I want you to drive them. And it's like, why would I do that? Why would I leave these guys sitting here in the middle of France to go pick up somebody else? Like, I'm not interested. I want to finish my tour here. And then Green Day blew up, and it was like, all right, they'll pass by me. That's the same with Rancid, this punk band Rancid, like 93, they were over for the first time in Europe on their first record, and 2 of the guys had just gotten sober in the band, and they were miserable, and it was cold and rainy, and my van didn't have like a great heating, so they were freezing the back of the van there. Driving like for hours with cold feet, sleeping on in these shitty clubs, and just like hungry.
Yeah.
And then like these guys were sober, so now you couldn't really drink around them either. We could guys, they weren't. It was a
lifestyle. It was a lifestyle. It was a different kind of, I came up in van tours, and you're just bringing me back to like what it was like. Cause honestly, I kind of like put it out of my head and forgotten I look back at it and think like, man, those times were great, but like, it was also rough, man. It was a really rough time. We were super poor. I did van tours with 8 guys to a van, and if we could afford it, and it was a luxurious night, if we could afford 1 hotel room, we used to take the mattress off the bed, and you could fit like 3 grown men if you turned them sideways, you could fit them 3 on the mattress, 3 on the box springs. But if you didn't want to try to sleep on the floor and you elected to like sleep in the van, then you had to pay for gas money to like have the heat on if you were going to run the engine. It was rough back in the day. But it was a lifestyle that we loved, and like it was. But you're right about the alcohol. That was like even in a shitty punk band, like all you get for hospitality is chips, salsa, beer and booze. Like, and that's like the bare minimum that you're going to get every night. And we lived off of that for a long time, man. But like,
we toured Germany. A lot of times these subsidized youth clubs would actually have a little bit of money, and they would actually build a room in their club somewhere for you to sleep. And then the biggest thing was breakfast. Germans were big on breakfast. And like breakfast, that was like they would like these fresh bread and spreads and cheese, and and coffee, like, and right there, you know, when you woke up, I'll never forget those, you know, those days. German breakfast.
They're much better about that over there. But
Yeah.
all right, so look, take me into, I want to start talking about where the turning point was in your career, where you started realizing that you were going down an unhealthy lifestyle. You know, from our talk yesterday, you said it might have been around the time you were with Offspring. Was that like 96 where things started to change for you?
95, 96 was the first time where, like, you know, I started feeling like, hey, you know, and by the time, like, yeah, the Offspring, after that first tour in Europe, they took me to the US. My first international tour brought me to Australia, Japan, Latin America. And all of a sudden, like, at the end of the tour, I had a work permit to move to the US. It's like, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, let that chance slide by. I got no business in the US, but like, let's see, you know, like, you know, I got a green card. I'll have another green card work permit for 3 years. Right. For the US. So let's go check out what LA is gonna give, you know, and then leave Berlin behind. Best friends I ever had, Berlin, you know, everybody thinks they're cold people, but like warmest people once you get in there. Anyways, so yeah, I had been touring. The first year, of course, the Offspring was a lot of work, a lot of learning. First computer was given to me by an accountant. A label was on the label called Epitaph, and Brett Gurwitz like was a really big fan of like technology, and like he was really ahead of a lot of people, a lot of companies, and had his own email server, and like. So I was lucky, and I got my first email address was Fitzjoy at epitaph.com. I got my first computer, started doing the email and stuff. A lot of learning, like ME Pro, like eventually Excel, Docs. So not that much time to party much, you know, but still metabolism like is okay. You know, you still feel great. Like you can party till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning and still wake up at 9 a.m. and be good and like do your accounting, you know. Yeah, I grew, you know, metabolism wasn't that fast anymore. And like, it started like storing up in my body, you know, body fat. And also I wasn't moving that much besides the walks and the walking around, like as you start doing when you start playing bigger venues. The Offspring.
Yeah. You mentioned that the Offspring brought a trainer on tour.
Yeah, eventually the second year, the second comeback tour after their first big success, and they brought a trainer on tour to run and to work out a little bit, to be a little healthier, to kind of balance it out the partying. You know, they like to drink and they like to hang out in dive bars after their big shows, but like that, you know, for some of them,
cool. That's probably the earliest time I've ever heard of someone taking a trainer on tour. Like that wasn't a common thing back in the day. So they made that choice to
yeah, I mean, they had already crossed over. I was like I was maybe like 6-7 years younger than them. So they already had probably crossed over to like this time where your body like doesn't respond that great anymore. So like, and he was a fairly smart guy. So it's like, you know, I need to balance this stuff out. And so, yeah, he brought a trainer on tour, and I knew I was overweight. I had 240, you know, like, so I know I had to do something. And like earlier, 2 years earlier already, I had quit smoking because I didn't feel good anymore, and like constantly coughing when you wake up in the morning for 5 minutes is not a great thing, you know.
Dude,
so I knew like.
I was a passive smoker for like 15 years on tour. It was terrible. It took me a couple months it took me years of trying on and off to quit, but I finally quit, but it took quitting coffee and cigarettes at the same time to go through that, because they went hand in hand. So when I quit cigarettes and coffee, I was an asshole on tour for like 6 months. It was brutal. And I was doing children's theater tours at the time, so it wasn't a good mix for anybody. But, you know, so it's rough, right? But how did you do it? You know, you had to make that mental choice to start somewhere.
Yeah, like, well, the smoking was fairly easy. You know, I knew I had to quit smoking. And also smoking, I never liked to smoke anymore. Like, you know, the first time you quit smoking, when you pick it back up, it's never the same. it's never the same. So, and I quit 4 times or 5 times, and it was just like not feeling great anymore. It was just an addiction. So I had a break, like the offspring went home, and I was waiting for my green card approval in Amsterdam, and Hein van Drey that was in charge of Epitaph there. Took empathy for me and said, yeah, why didn't you come work for us for a little while, you know? And he just moved into a bigger house, and he had given me his, he said, like, I have an apartment here, like that's I'm still paying the lease on for 2 months or so. Why didn't you go live here? And I was living on Prinsengracht in Amsterdam next to the Frank house, you know, working at the Epitaph. And there was like a little bit of a break, you know, the tour was on the break for a month or so. You know, transitioning in between the Europe tour and the next leg of a US tour. And it's like, how do I quit smoking, you know? Because like, you know, every single time I drink or get drunk, like that's when I start smoking again. So it's like, hey, yeah, let's just use that nicotine patch that everyone was talking about and keep drinking. So, you know, at the end of the day in the office, Hein liked to take us out for dinner and drinks most of the time. And I would slap on a nicotine patch and just like keep drinking, and that's how I, you know, got used to being drunk and resisting the urge of like the movement, you know, the habit. I smoked cigars as a compensation. For the next like 3-4 years or so, I became a cigar aficionado, because for every single week I didn't smoke, I gave myself a cigar on the weekend. So yeah, I became a cigar collector, and that lasted for another 5-6 years even, I think. But like eventually that dozed off too, and by mid-30s I was like complete non-smoker. Yeah, so the trainer on the Offspring tour really got me, you know, at the beginning, like 15-minute workouts, I was on the floor dead, you know? But like, you know, you build up, and like and once you start feeling healthier, you start eating better too. And obviously I was on a fairly big tour, arena tour at a time, arenas and big venues. And so there was budget, and budget was not an issue anymore. So we could eat a little healthier, and you know, there was choices. At this point, it was choices. It was not like a lifestyle, more a forceful lifestyle. It was like a lifestyle with choices. And so I became healthy. I got skinny. I lost the weight, and yeah, that's where I started. Like, you know, since the lead singer was running, I could like, you know, sneak in some time with him running, or going to the gym. You know, that was
it's easy when the boss is, you know, wants to bring in the healthy lifestyle into the tour, because you have to you know, take that and, you know, manage that expectation every day and give them that outlet. And then, and it starts from there, and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the tour as well. Like, I'm sure not just yourself, but everyone on tour, if they see that energy, it's addictive. They're like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
You know?
It's usually, the tour is always split in 2 parts, you know, the healthy guys and the party guys, you know. There's a day crew and there's the night crew. You know, there's the guys that like go to bed early and sleep and get up early. And there's the guys that like keep partying, and then like in the morning, you see the difference of the faces at bus call, right? That's a personal choice, you know. There's a personal choice, and like I early on always like made a decision to have like a few rules to live by. And one was like no drugs, you know. As a tour manager, I'm in charge. I can't be doing any drugs.
Hey, Fitzjoy, Fitzjoy, as we're navigating this, you know, kind of beginning of health and how all of this is starting to unfold, I was intrigued on our turning point discussion where you started going through the timeline a little bit. You were talking about you're running for your escape, and then you had mentioned that you hurt your back, and how that kind of changed your thought process of touring all together. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and kind of how that affected your timeline and the turning point?
Yeah, so forwarding a couple of years, like my first injury on tour actually was like a silly scooter accident in the parking lot racing bus drivers, and twisted my ankle, tore all my ligaments in my ankle and my knee. Very painful. This was a time where I was like giving myself at least an hour, like every other day or on days off, to actually go work out, go running, be healthy, catch up. because like, you know, at the time, like, you know, I always wore double hats, you know, whether it was a driver and managing the money and the guitar tech, or whether I was like a tour manager and an accountant, you know, like tour manager, accountant on that tour, felt very responsible about being there. Didn't go home, you know, like I went to the emergency room, and the crew bus picked me up on the way out, you know, to the next gig. And you know, I couldn't obviously work out anymore, and that injury actually disaligned my body. And later on in life, for I think 5-6 years, I was a big runner now, you know, mostly on days off, because like my time at the time was really focused on everything was work. Workout was for days off. It was not yet like a daily occurrence where I made time actually to do this, or where I found I had time to do this. I was going through also like an emotional distress. You know, like I had broken one of my golden rules of never sleeping with anybody you tour with, and it caused me to divorce my wife. And I was going through that episode of my life, and I was so heartbroken, and it was so heavy on me that, like, you know, I waited till I was 35 to get married, and then like within a year and a half of the marriage, it just completely fell apart, and I couldn't deal with myself. And at the time, I was like, well, we were in the prep of like a second world tour for Shakira, and it was pretty intense. And I just couldn't sleep because I was so heartbroken. And I put myself into the workload, and I decided to go sober through this time too. No drinks at all, no socializing, no drinking. I want to face this difficulty I'm facing on my own. And so 4 o'clock in the morning, when you get back to the hotel room, I couldn't sleep. So I would go running intensively for an hour and a half. And I did that every day for the next 3-4 months. And then I was also doing martial arts at the time when I was home. And so I came home with a little bit of a back pain from all the running. I wasn't really paying attention much to it. The tour took away too much of my focus. And then like I went to a martial art class, and I remember that after we talked about it yesterday, and did a shoulder throw, and like I herniated my disc, you know, and now like I couldn't move anymore. And now back, like I can't move. I can mentally, you know, like how do I like get rid of this stress that lives in my body? And I toured with it for like another like 6-7 months.
And who were you on tour with at this point? Sorry.
Well, I did the entire Shakira tour with it, and then I transitioned. It was one of those things where, you know, I had committed to start up a Gwen Stefani tour, and Shakira's tour kept on extending, you know, with months. And at some point, like I couldn't let like my promise to start this other tour down, and so like I left Shakira to go to Gwen Stefani, and during rehearsals for Gwen Stefani, I finally went to see a specialist, and I get some MRI take, and then and I had a herniated disc, and still like I refused to take care of it. I went on tour with it, not being able to exercise, living healthier, eating healthier, but still back to now I needed to take Vicodin and alcohol to release that pain, and like I was pretty responsible, so I wouldn't drink till after the show was done, you know, like that was my thing, like I will not drink until the show is done. But like, you know, sleepless nights from the pain, you know, and so eventually they made the decision for me that like I should go take care of myself. And at the end of the US tour, in transition to go to Asia, a fly tour where I couldn't sit on the airplane at that point. You know, I was sitting on the ball. I was wearing this corset, you know, this belt, and they decided for me, you got to go take care of yourself. And it's like, okay.
So this continuing on, you had talked about having your back surgery and how this would kind of start your journey in yoga. And the release there and how that's kind of affected your life up to this point. Can you talk to us about your kind of transition into yoga? And for anyone who's on the timeline, we're right around 2007, I would say. You'd
We're
say
like
that's where we're at?
2007. Yeah, 2007 was the big change. You know, like the time where like um, I I went through the whole year of like serious back pain, and got sent home to go take care of myself. Got a nice severance pay, so I wasn't worried about like being off for too long. I was home for about 4 months because it takes some time to schedule surgeries and stuff. And right after the surgery, of course, I wanted to get back on the road, and you know, I found my first boy band. Got offered a job for a boy band, and when I got there, got along with the guys great. You know, like I was just replacing a tour manager for a couple months because he was finishing up something else, which temporarily. But after a month or so there, like they asked me like, hey, you know, like this is actually, we enjoy you being here. Would you take over, you know, from this other tour manager and do our next tour? And you know, it was fun and stuff. But those guys, like, there was a lot of partying going on, and a lot of like staying up late, and like there was not much health going on. And I decided, like, you know, I can't, you know, I cannot go on a tour like this anymore. You know, I just need time for myself. And in the recovery of the surgery, I tried to run for a while, but like pain started coming back, and so I had to find something else to release my stress on tour. And one day, I think it was a sunny afternoon in Denver, I looked up yoga. You know, somebody told me you should try yoga. Actually, my wife at the time, my wife at the time, was a little bit of a yogi. I was never interested. I went to a couple yoga classes like earlier, and I was never interested. It was too quiet for me. You know, I had to move and up. But so I found this practice in the studio in Denver, and it killed me. And it's like, oh my God, just like without just standing on the mat in a hot room, I feel like I ran like 20 miles. I was dead. And it's like, I'll never do this again. But the recovery within an hour and a half, I felt this energy, and I felt like I could take on the world. And I felt so healthy, you know, like cleaned out. So like, oh my God. And then I became a hot yoga aficionado, you know. And so much energy I had. I found myself back on the next Shakira promotion tour, finding ways to studios every morning, regardless of how long the day was. Getting up at 5:30 in the morning, rushing to the studio, taking that 90 minutes class, getting back to the hotel by like 8 o'clock, having breakfast, and starting my day felt better than just having this few hours of sleep. And I could even like stay up late, no problem. So yeah, that was a big transition.
You had stepped away from touring for a bit, and you were doing teacher training, correct? I think you were talking.
Yeah, eventually eventually I didn't end up doing that year's tour. You know, I had been tour managing Shakira for 10 years. I didn't feel appreciated by the new management, which was not a real management. And I had to, you know, kind of make a point, you know, that things weren't that great over there. And then when I got a phone call to take a meeting with Katy Perry, who was like, you know, this new upcoming artist that was coming out with apparently an album that was gonna really break big time. You know, I didn't feel the need to take the meeting because, hey, I have a job. You know, I'm going on the road like in 2 weeks probably, and with Marty Holm. Marty Holm, I was a tour director for the tour. And then like I met with them, and I felt like, wow, these people really could be appreciated here. And mentally, you know, this was like needed, you know, like I wanted to be appreciated. I didn't want to just be a tour manager running this big arena tour. I wanted to be appreciated. I wanted to be useful, and I didn't feel very useful anymore on that tour. So I made this decision to like make the transition. When I got the job, actually, like it took a week or so for them to decide, and when they go back to me, it's like, like we'd like you to give this a try. It's like, okay, here we go. And I kept the healthy lifestyle. And what I also did on that tour is I started a relationship with somebody on the tour, all management approved, artist approved. It was a growing thing. Somebody, was hired and I had the feelings for, and eventually developed into a relationship. And so now I was a Bikram yoga practitioner as much as I could, and I had a relationship on tour, which needed time, which you need time for. You need time for relationships. So I started changing the way I did things, not being in control so much anymore, releasing some of the control, like seeing what happened if you didn't make certain decisions. Who would make the decision? How would things develop? By giving people a lot of information, like how much less phone calls do you get from your team if they have all the information they need, when they can be self-sufficient.
Fitzjoy, talk a little bit about just moving into that and finding balance on the road and working, and how you've, living a personal life and working with, and still working in the industry, and how you found that balance.
So like, well, eventually I had to step down a little bit to really eventually find that 50-50 balance, and we'll get to that. But at that time, like, I did this tour 2 years. It was a tour that was constantly behind, she was bigger than like they wanted to keep her, or like they planned her being. So it was constantly catching up, and everything was bigger, and like no time to plan, and like constantly catch up. So it was stressful, and there was budgets involved too, of course. And so like I didn't have an assistant on that tour, and so it was exhausting and excruciating. But like still, like on days off, I would still find the time to go to studios. Also, like some of the entourage dancers, want to be healthy, so you find like alternatives. Like a few of the crew guys on that tour like started like that extreme workout program video on the video, and started with 3 guys in a small little corner of the arena, and by the end of the tour it was like 20 people and on the big screen, like working out after sound check, before dinner, and that was great. Everyone was healthy, everyone was like stable. There was a little bit of partying going on, but like not too much, and like once in a while we'd go like release to a club, and Katy Perry was very good in providing entertainment for her team in many different ways, like healthy ways as well. So that was great, but like that tour came to an end, and like I was exhausted. I was done. And I planned to like join this Bikram yoga teachers training, and there's only 2 trainings a year, and they're like one in fall and one in spring, and they're 9 weeks long, and you're confined in one place for 9 weeks, night and day, and you do this yoga and you learn how to become an instructor. And so I planned that for the April training, and the tour wrapped up in November, December. And then of course, like things, when you plan things, like somebody else has different plans, right? So Russell, or like one of the names, but like the artist had difficulties in a relationship, and like that came to an end, and also instead of like planning to be home and having babies for that year, like she went on to promote a new song, and like then she wanted to promote like a movie that was being made about the tour. And before I knew it, I was like full-time on the road promoting it, all the way to like right before my teacher training. And then, I had asked the accountant to cover 2 of the corporate shows that overlapped the teacher training. And cool guy. And so Where was I?
We're talking about you going into your teacher training a bit. You were diving.
Back a moment for a second. So yeah, the training was overlapped by 2 shows, and so I asked the management if our accountant could maybe cover these shows if I advanced them completely, and that was absolutely fine. And halfway through the training, I got a phone call from management saying like, hey, like we really going big time into promoting this movie, and we really need a full-time tour manager. Are you okay if we hire a tour manager to come fill in these days temporarily? So, like, you know, I started this thing for me for the first time in my life. I'm really fully doing something for me, you know. And there was also, you know,
to kind of stem to that note, can you talk about the sacrifices that we all make on tour in some way, but when you're 100% immersed in touring, and I love how we kind of dove into this topic a little bit about the realities of touring and how we feel like there's this kind of weight on us that our responsibilities to stay on tour, whether that's missing weddings or missing funerals, and the personal side of our life that we always tend to put in our pocket for tour first, always.
When touring is your life, it is your life, and the families you create are on the tour. It's your people that you work with, your crew, your band, your artists, your management. Those become your close friends, your closest family. So everything else in your life becomes secondary. Therefore, like, you know, a strong relationship at home supporting you is very important. Having that emotional support so you can be stable. But yeah, also, yeah, like you said, funerals, weddings. Yeah, I missed my grandmother's funeral. I was in Minneapolis doing a big show with the Offspring, and like my grandmother passed, and like I couldn't like just fly to Europe. I was holding this tour together in my mind. And same with my 3 of my brothers got married, and like I missed all of their weddings. I just couldn't quit for a couple of days, you know. You can even do, like, I got married in 2004, and it was an off year for me. Like the Shakira tour came to an end, and like I was gonna find a job for in between. I was offered to tour manage Pink, and I had to say, like, you know what, I'm not gonna take on that job because I'm getting married this year, and I want it to be a big wedding. And I need my focus on this wedding, so I'd rather do a little rock band that I can do with my eyes closed. You know, you can't handle a pop tour for like 6-7 months, and then all of a sudden it's like, sorry guys, see ya, I'm gonna get married. You know, maybe nowadays, like, you know, it's a little easier with the technology that exists and whatnot, but like 10-15 years ago, it was a little harder. You know, you were the center, you were the keeper of all the secrets, you know, of everything, and like just passing it over to somebody else was not like an easy thing to do. So yeah, you sacrificed your weddings and your funerals, and you really.
I got married on a 2-week break from tour, actually 10 days, and then 2 days afterwards flew to Australia for a tour leg. Just crammed it in.
Same here, 2-week break and then flew off to Europe.
I caught my best friend's wedding in November, and it was the first friend's wedding I've caught since I started touring. It was a very emotional day to make that moment. So
yeah, it's just like slowly seeing how also people are changing. New generation, like, you know, they leave a tour for anything. You know, like a friend of a friend is getting married, I gotta be there. Like last year, like I had a guy that like on my crew that like maybe like left the tour or didn't do like 4 or 5 weekends, warrior weekends, because like, you know, he was a popular guy, and like he was kept on being asked by his friends to be in their best man. And I kind of felt like a little bit of like, like, you know, I would have never left. But actually, like, I actually appreciated like that he was doing that, because like he was thinking about his own mental health, his relationships at home, his really strong grounding, because a tour is a tour.
He's actually having a life.
He's having a life outside of this touring life. You can get fired any day. You know, you can be replaced just like that nowadays as well. So, yes, yeah, throw yourself into it, but like also know like you need you. You need to start thinking a little bit about you, and not in an egocentric way, not like me, like uh, like there's a lot of Instagram yoga people
Thank you
nowadays.
for sharing that with us. And just for anyone on the timeline, I think we had kind of navigated through a 5-year window. So I think we're around like 2012, 2013 now in your story, correct?
We are, where were we in the story? Sorry, hold on.
You just put your tour, kind of push it aside to focus on teacher training.
Teacher training, correct. So like, I was not going to leave the teacher training to come back to chaos. This was something I was doing for myself. I needed to finish this. And then now, like, my intention was never to be a teacher. My intention was to do this teacher training for myself and maybe, like go straight back on tour and save up money for a studio for retirement. That was my plan. Saving a lot of money. So like, and maybe over the years becoming a teacher, but like my plan was just to do teacher training, come back, keep on touring, It doesn't work that way. You get into your consciousness, you get into your spirituality. You can't just like kick that back out. You find something deep within that starts grounding you, and it starts like becoming what you actually are intended to be. You can't just go straight back to what you were doing before. So, like they hired Katy Perry, hired another tour manager that was supposed to be like there just to do the temporary gigs and the promo, and I decided like I put so much effort and tears. I cried so many times during that teacher training because I thought I couldn't do it. We go through hell, right? And we everything gets done always. There's no doesn't exist in our world. The word no doesn't exist. It's always yes, 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 until it's no. All of you know that. And so I decided, like, I'm gonna not only really try to become a teacher now. I'm also gonna go back to Belgium and restore. And this brings a little bit of emotion to me, but restore my relationships with my parents and with the brothers I wasn't there for the weddings, and I even had never been to the grave of my grandmother or grandfather. By the time those graves were already gone. And so I found a job in the yoga studio in Brussels, and off I went. I went to Brussels for 2-3 months, and I lived in the yoga studio. But I started going back to my past and restoring the foundational relationships where I grew up with my parents, with my friends, with my family, and I got close. And from there on, like this, I kept a relationship with the studio, and every year since then, for the next 3-4 years, I came back for Christmas and took over the management of the studio for 2-3 weeks, for up to a month, I think, to be there with my family while I was doing the yoga practice. And that then brings us back to like, well, after I was in Belgium for 2 months, and I found another job in the studio in Monterrey in Mexico, and I lived in that studio for about like a month. Meanwhile, my partner, my touring partner, everything was so great on tour, but then like, in a different reality, she couldn't stand that I was always gone, and like, when are you gonna be home, and like, I'd be here for the relationship. You're always now you're away from yoga, you're not even with me here. So, and then meanwhile, Shakira, Katy Perry had moved on, but also Shakira had a big change happened there. There was a management change, and Marty Holm was busy with something else, and the management asked me to do a few shows for Shakira. And this was like, September 2012. I did needed some continuing income, so I took on the jobs. It was 2 jobs. One was iHeart Las Vegas, big production, one-off. And another one was a World Cup series for female in Baku, Azerbaijan. Remember Mary Jo?
Oh,
I took
yes.
Mary Jo out as
Azerbaijan.
and like so like I like the first show, like after a month of advancing and everything was canceled. Shakira was pregnant, and the doctor decided she couldn't fly. She couldn't make the trip from Spain over to Vegas. So while trucks were in motion to Vegas, everything got canceled.
Wow.
And then the second show, a month later in Baku, I ended up sitting in this 4 Seasons 1-bedroom suite, just not wanting to be there. I was miserable, and it was a great group of people, and like it was happy to be there. It was like one of the shows where like you were there a week early to rehearse because it was a big televised show, and it was like happy and partying. And Shakira was pregnant, so she was doing her own thing, of course. But I just couldn't leave my room. Like I didn't want to go out. I was miserable. It's like I just can't do this right now. So I came home, and as life gives you anytime exactly what you need, an opportunity came to me to become a day-to-day manager for an artist that didn't have a great reputation, but for a great company. Like the great management company, division of Azov. They had a magazine, To Hit magazine. So, and it was like really like a 9-to-5 job, come to the office and watch these guys while create a crew for these people to go out of, find a tour manager, production manager, and look at routing and budgets. Exactly what I would be doing as a tour manager, but now I had to guide these younger tour managers and production managers to a gig that was like very challenging, because the act was very known for just like putting people to the shredder, just pick them up, pay them little money, and shred them out on the other side when they didn't fulfill. So there was like a constant change of tour manager, production managers group. So I did it for about 2 years, and it gave me the personal opportunity to like launch myself into the Los Angeles yoga scene. I could teach classes 6 a.m. in the morning, 7 p.m. at night, weekends off. Occasionally I had to do what the day manager does, like start like a tour, like go to Europe for a week and make sure the tour starts off well. Go to Rock am Rio to make sure the broadcast is taken care of, stuff like that. So I still was traveling a little bit. I still was in the music industry, but at the same time I also was home. And after like, it was like not an easy time. I was single. I was in LA. I was fairly lonely. And I also felt like, I'm doing the same work I used to do, but I'm not getting the fulfillment of being there. So somebody else is actually being there in the action, and I'm just behind the scenes, completely behind the scenes now doing the work. And plus like in between teaching yoga and the work in the office, I didn't feel home anymore. I didn't feel like I could never relax at home, really. Like I didn't have time to take care of the house. And I really missed those extended times at home, those 4 or 5 weeks between tours you have sometimes. So sometimes those 6-week breaks you have. And sometimes that, like that, once in a while, maybe every single career has that, maybe you're without a job for 8 months, And that's what happened next. Like eventually after 2 years, the management company decided to let the artist go its own way because they were just too demanding for the even the management company to handle. And so I was offered to work for the artist out of his house maybe, and I said I'm not gonna do that. And like I think it's time to go back on the road, And I thought it would be easy, I just put my name back out there and go, like I sacrificed a few big tours, like. While I was at the management company, and I told everybody, I made it loud and clear, like I have a new career. I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm just kind of doing this music business on the side. I did another teacher training when I first got laid off. The first 6 weeks, I went to Mexico, did a 6-week training with another teacher. And then I started looking for work, and it wasn't that easy. The jobs didn't come. And so I had to start from scratch again. I had to start back to like management company happened to manage a band called Bush. yeah, through Gwen Stefani, and like I was known in that camp and with the singer, and they asked me if I could do their tour. You know, and then I took on some one-offs, you know, like, you know, Weekend Here with Frank Ocean on Bonnaroo, or, you know, another festival, and the difference, you know, like, and then also you could measure, and then like slowly also, like I went to a Katy Perry show, and I kind of felt really sad, like, oh my God, this used to be my gig, and I gave this up. I gave this up, and I really had like a love, like it was painful, you know, being there. Yeah. And everybody was still there, and you know.
Do you think at that point, if you were offered a big, you know, world tour, would you have taken it? Because you turned down Pink prior to this part in your life. I'm wondering, like, where your mind, if the opportunity was there again at this point.
At that point, we're in 2014 at this point, and yes, I would have at that point. And then I went to that Katy Perry tour, and some people kind of felt a little sorry for me, I think, and put out a word that I needed some work. And then next thing, I got a call from a management company in London who managed like Rita Ora and Iggy Azalea, and they needed like a day-to-day manager. And the management company I worked for recommended me, and so they flew me over to London, and yeah, they needed somebody. In LA to start. They were starting up an LA office and needed somebody to help out there. That was my trickling back into the world, and you know, also it was intense. It was intense trying to follow these pop stars, man. Like from like while you're not there, you know, like in the background, like trying to follow what they're doing, you know, and trying to keep track of their finances. And that was kind of like my job, keeping track of their budgets and finances while you're not out there, like being able to stop certain decisions from being made firsthand. And you know, like there was a long time, 3 months or so of negotiating, and like they decided to hire me as a consultant first, and I'm billing hours on hourly basis, and it was fine for a while, but it was like, oh my God, do I really want to get back into this, you know? And then Bush went back out, and they had asked me if I could jump in here and there, tour managing a little bit, and I already committed to Bush. And it's like, no, you know what, I'm gonna go with these guys. And I went back on that tour, and like it was way smaller again. It was like back to the theaters, you know. But I remember this, and I could do this with my eyes closed, you know. And since I could do it with my eyes closed, I had also a little bit more time, and so I was able to get up in the morning and go to yoga, and try to motivate other people to come with me to yoga, and yeah.
I know that feeling. Isn't it crazy that when you take on like a smaller, easier tour, it
Yeah.
does. You do turn on sort of the second nature of touring. It's like, yeah, I can do that, no problem. And you can still sort of live the lifestyle of touring, but also, yeah, take more time for yourself, because there's not as much to do, or the expectations aren't as crazy. So you have,
yeah. And at the end of the day, when we get to you're in your mid 40s, and like you've kind of seen what it's up there, and you also know, like, you know, financially, like, you know, I have a house, you know, I was always fairly, you know, conservative with my savings and stuff, and like, you know, do I really need all that extra money? What do you do with it? Buy more stuff? You know, isn't my health a little like more important than like? And you all must have felt it, like those days that you think it's the end of the world, because there's so many problems stacked up, and
yeah,
you don't see the end of it, and you see, like, you feel yourself fade, and it's like, this is it, I'm dead. What do I do?
That's a great point, and I think in this industry, as with many industries, but especially in touring, there's this eternal appetite for people to just keep improving, to keep going a step up, to keep leveling up, to get to those arena tours, to get to those stadium tours, to get to the biggest tours going, because there's a prestige with that. There's increased money. There's increased, it looks great on your resume, but it's something that we've all talked about privately in our group, and there's definitely a feeling that amongst some that getting to the top has a set of challenges that after a while some people can end up taking 1 or 2 or 3 steps back down the ladder to find somewhere they're happier, and that, like you said, that maybe it allows them to live their life with more balance than being at those A-level arena tours where it's just nonstop pressure all of the time. Is that something that you found that maybe taking a step or 2 back gave you more
like
balance?
First of all, those moments of like extreme stress, like where you realize like this is the end of it, this is my end, like
I'm pretty sure I almost had a heart attack in a jump seat one night pulling out.
Yeah,
after a particularly stressful day, and then one of the party was drunk and off his manners and came at me sideways, and I was super professional about it, but I remember pulling out of the venue and sitting in the jump seat with pain in my chest, trying to catch my breath and go, and I really need to check and see how much wear and tear on my psyche and my body I'm willing to go through moving forward. And I took the first 6 months of the following year off and found myself working with elephants in Thailand and underserved children in Cambodia so that I could come back to some semblance of what life and reality was actually like, and how much you actually need. Because, when you work in big pop, your skew of what you live in the bubble, and inside the bubble, it's not necessarily reality either. So you have to aggressively make moves towards balance and finding balance. And that's a super pivotal point, Fitz. How do you find balance these days?
How do you find balance? Yeah, and like I said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Like the solutions always like offered came to me. Like even on Shakira, I was with her for like 10, 11 years, but there was always a level of humanity there. There was a craziness of the pop world. Shakira was a humanitarian. She did other things besides this. I found myself like visiting schools in the middle of the jungle in Choco. I found myself like in El Salvador, opening up the UNICEF office, cutting the ribbon, going to talk in the stadium to like 8,000 gang members, So like that balance, that's why like I could survive in that environment. Gwen Stefani, kindest person ever, like does everything for children hospitals and whatnot. If you have artists that like also realize that like this my stardom, my world, my pop world, and there's humanity, and they kind of level this out a little bit. You're good, but like that doesn't happen everywhere, and
so Fitz, how are you now, right? So here we are, we've traveled these really long and winding roads, and there's been so many ups and downs, and your mental health has been on the line at times, and your physical health has been on the line at times. But yet here you are, you're still in the game. Where are you today? How do you keep yourself with everything that you know and that you've experienced? It's still, the business is still a very difficult business. So what's it like for you to stay healthy now on tour? What's your practice these days?
Well, yeah, it's like, it's a little bit of a story too. Like obviously 2014 was a very hard year for me going back into this, but by the end of the year, I realized like with Bush that like smaller is might be a little better, and eventually like, I didn't follow I didn't follow up with become the day-to-day management for this big management company, which I'm very grateful I didn't. And I stuck with the smaller band, and then the smaller band like went to like another smaller band, and then like another tour manager asked me to, hey, can you step in for me for the Backstreet Boys for a month in China, and like, and after that, like, this other band came, Incubus, like, hey, Europe, all these things that you can do with your eyes closed, where you can don't need all the focus for, because you know automatically what your body, it's engraved in you now. You know, it's not this new pop, huge, growing thing. It's you touring with like older people, you know, people that have been established, that like realize they went through their ups and downs, and like they realize like, hey, I'm 50 and like passion for music, you know, how it all started. And like, I don't need to go kill myself on the road to try to make an extra, you know, a couple $1 million that I really don't need. Like, it's about like bringing music to the people, you know, and that's where I ended up. Eventually, I had one more big A-list celebrity I worked for, and I left like a beautiful small little shed summer tour for it, to do like weekends in Vegas, you know, and weekends in Europe for these huge festivals. And at the end, like, you know, it was very stressful, and I got fired for, you know, something that wasn't my responsibility at all. And I got fired for the first time in my life. And, you know, and then, you know, Jim Rigby gave me an opportunity to take on like one of the acts that like he couldn't take on. And then, you know, I came to this like 50-year-old singer-songwriter, happy, you know, older band guys, you know, like, yeah, I became the father, trying to, you know, keep those guys healthy, you know, like, let's change the rider out. Let's put healthy things on the rider. After show food, no pizza, guys. Like, you know, let's order from this vegan restaurant or something, or like, let's real food, you know, like, let's get healthier beverages on. Like, who wants to do yoga with me? You know, I would show up at like every day. Like, I would show up at the venue to do my pre-artist arrival run through, and I would teach the crew a yoga class, you know, after lunch. Yeah, and it's not that like everybody showed up. You know, it was like 3-4 guys, but they were steady, and like. And I'd go back and pick up my band and like bring them to the show. But then like, yeah, at the end of that, like on one of the breaks, I actually went into extreme yoga. Every single break I had, and those breaks were like where we'd be on tour for 3 weeks and then be 5-6 weeks off. And that was perfect for me. And on the breaks, I would find teacher trainings, and like, I would be really heavily involved, like in learning as much as I could. And I got involved with like, you know, a yoga practice, an extreme yoga practice that's is built for like, you know, if you start at 20, you know, you're strong in your core within, to maintain it throughout your 50s, 60s, you know. But like, we're starting at 47 after two back surgeries, or after back surgery and knee surgeries.
So Fitz, what's your routine currently? What do you actually do now? How's it look? Like, what's a day look like for you?
So through yoga, I broke my back again, and this time I got the surgery, I got the fused, and then like by accident, like I fell on this at a 3-1 break, and I got on this tour for these trio DJs in Europe, and they were kind of like into the yoga, into the meditation aspect of it. And I replaced a tour manager that was like more old school and like hadn't given up his habits from his experience in the 80s and the 90s, and he was still there, you know, and they needed a change. And like, I brought that change, and I was able to integrate all these healthy lifestyle with them, you know, like eating healthier, like peace before the show, maybe a little meditation, a little yoga. And over the last couple of years, they've integrated like yoga sessions into their festival shows they produce. They came out with a yoga album that then was promoted in yoga studios. And, you know, like the first year was like probably album promotion, touring the bus, but like the last 2 years, I've been island hopping basically. I leave the weekends to do a show in Vietnam or China, and I come back for the week. And I don't even come back anywhere. I have a partner now that is a spiritual, amazing human being, and I visit her teacher trainings in between touring. So I go back from tour to like a spiritual place where people want to become yoga teachers, and I help her train or help her with their scheduling and with whatever is needed for students to become yoga teachers, and that's where I've been. I go back between teacher trainings and in Bali and Goa, and it's a lot of traveling. And the last 2 years I've been recovering from the last back surgery, which has been hard. I gained some weight, and I was about, today I just got a reminder like, oh, today Radio City Hall in New York, we're supposed to be on an acoustic tour with 14 people on stage, like where we had hired even crew guys that are yoga teachers, like we had 4 yoga teachers. We were going to have 4 yoga teachers on this tour. We implemented a very healthy tour rider, very healthy organic foods.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to implement like daily yoga exercise, meditation exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be my first. It was going to be my first Paradise tour, basically. But then
I was supposed to be on it too. I was very much looking forward to it.
And Fitz, you pretty much have an early to bed practice now. Not too much drinking.
You were like, I tried to, the last 2 years also kind of switched. I was like getting up every day at 6, 7 a.m. in the morning to do yoga practice and start my day. But then like the back surgery, between the back surgery and starting to fly a lot, it took a toll on my body. And like, unfortunately you're with DJs, like it's late nights, like it's raves, but like, it's kind of fun because it's healthy raves. It's like trance. So people come there and like their music is their religion. Their music is their meditation, So it's a healthy crowd. It's a very peaceful crowd I deal with. And like, we just come in and come out, where we fly a lot. Mm-hmm. So that, like, sometimes it's exhausting to fly. It bloats your body, like right. It's,
So we also, we want to give a few tips and tricks to some folks out there who are touring, who want to begin to live a healthier lifestyle. And we talked about locating local yoga studios, maybe carrying a bike.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of options. Even on the Katy Perry tour, like I bought, like at the beginning of the tour, I bought like 3-4 bicycles, and like, so people had the option in the party to grab a bicycle and go to places. I would grab a bicycle every day and go to the yoga studio before my day started. Sometimes it requires getting up a little earlier, but mostly like, don't think that the whole tour revolves around you, that you hold everything together, because like you can be replaced just like that. Just do your job, do it well, do it with gratitude, and make sure you don't overload yourself. When you feel stress coming up, just step away. Right. I realized so many times, like, and I wish I had known that earlier in the day, that like, when you step away to take care of yourself, when you come back, often nobody missed you.
Right.
I mean,
thinking that 30 minutes, thinking that you being out off the radar for the 30 minutes of mental health time is a super egocentric way to think. You can probably take an hour and let people around either side of you know you're going to be off campus, off radio, in a dressing room, on the bus, taking a walk around the concourse for 20 minutes or just stairs, So, and we wanted to also chat a little bit too about, you had some really deep thoughts about greening and being on a green tour, and how that sort of ecology carries holistically across when you start taking care of yourself and you're taking care of your band and your crew, and then also the planet by measure.
Yeah, I believe like 20 years ago, it kind of like was, people knew that they really had to start taking care a little bit about the planets. People attempted green tours, and some successfully did, like Jack Johnson did a completely recyclable tour, and biodiesel fuel and whatnot. But like, it's kind of like, it comes and it goes. On the Katy Perry tour, I tried implementing like an early idea of like carrying like the water bottles, and like implementing water stations all around the venue, and just helping that terrible waste. Like when you tour with like 80 to 100 people, it's a lot of waste that generates. So you can like really start looking at like implementing a green rider, asking promoters to like use local grown foods, go shopping locally, use local sparkling water. You know, like why do you have to use Pellegrino that comes in from Italy? Give everybody a water bottle at the start of the tour. And this tour too, I was going to give everybody a water bottle. I was going to give everybody like a carry-on cutlery set, like, you know, a straw, like metal straw, like fork, knife, whatnot, for everybody to have their own, so like you can reduce that plastic and stuff. Yeah, riders, like, ask promoters to recycle. You know, it's, I think you can talk about this for like 2 hours, so you should probably make a session out of it.
Yeah, and then we talked about, Mark yesterday spoke about a company called Green Notes. Was it Green Notes that you had worked with?
Yeah, greennotes.com. They were on our tour this past winter, and were incredible to work with. I'll put their website down in the comments section, but you know, they provided us with vendors that were in every single market that had green initiatives and were impacting the community directly, and they provided our tour with all canteens, pumps, advanced questions of how to greenify the venue, and kind of taking that step. So it was fun doing a green tour this past winter, and you started to see a shift in venues start to see a light bulb go off. So even the venues that normally weren't used to recycling and doing that kind of stuff, and their venues are now starting to kind of shift gears and try to implement those initiatives.
It's long overdue, and I think change comes from those who are willing to make the effort. And you know, the US lags behind here in Canada and also in Europe in terms of recycling facilities. But you know, as a tour manager, you have a platform to push for change. You might make a small change, but I did a Canadian arena tour last year where we specifically put on our rider no bottled water, and you must supply enough water coolers throughout the backstage and in the dressing rooms. And a bunch of people, in, you know, 3 or 4 times across those 16, 17 venues, people came back to me and said, you know what, I got your email and I thought, yeah, we should be doing that. So we went out and bought a bunch of water coolers for the backstage. You know, and at arena level, a lot of that already exists, but some of these were small B, C market cities. And that's a very small change. But if everyone in the industry is doing that and putting pressure on venues and local promoters to make a change, then it's going to make a change globally. So I think that's...
Yeah, it goes further too, like taking a water bottle on the plane, you know, like plane food is not really healthy, and it creates like a lot of waste too, and airlines are trying to be better about recyclables and stuff. But just like, don't eat on the plane, see it as a passing time, you know, like, and you will have saved like plastic forks and knives and plates and like all this stuff it comes with, and healthy food.
All about implementing it. Like even this, like I travel royally with this cup now. Like it's with me. You've probably seen it from webinar number 1, and I just use the same cup for everything. Like, and then it travels with me everywhere.
Also, it is not too difficult. On the Neil Young tour, we definitely had dolphin pumps, and instead of cases of water, we had 5-gallon jugs in each of the dressing rooms, stage left, stage right, catering, hospitality, loading dock, and we had pumps. And instead of, you know, whoever was setting up dressing rooms and catering, you screw in the pumps. All the folks on tour had water bottles given to them. We asked for compostable flatware in catering. So it was still a disposable situation, but it's, you know, these days you have plasticware that's actually made of cornstarch. So it's compostable. It's easy enough to start to look for doubly recycled plates and things like that. And if you ask your locals, you can definitely make that happen. It's super, super easy. And also, you know, as far as putting things on the rider, I always have what I call the healthy corner, where even if it's in a small batch, there's a steamed veg, some brown rice, and a lean protein option that is not a casserole, that isn't fried or overly, it's just a simple bit of an option, because there's always going to be a few people that want to eat really, really, really clean. And it's not that hard. And like Henry said in his comments in the chat, when someone asked about having healthier options, go to the grocery store, and perhaps after show food is a rotisserie chicken like like you were talking about,
Oh,
or
yeah.
salad, you know, prefixed salads. Because if you actually get down to asking people, there's, you know, some of our dudes still want to have a mow down at 2 a.m, but mostly people are definitely, they might want to have a little bit of something because they're hungry when after loadout, but nobody really is, you know, I found on my last tours that if I didn't try and do herd food ordering, and if I just checked in with people, many more people declined, and it saved the tour money. And it also decreased a lot of waste because, you know, you get up in the morning and there's lots of stuff still sitting there. So,
and also this leads into something we've been talking about not sending out a hospitality rider in your advance, like not have, like just sending it out and advancing directly with the promoter like 2 weeks out or a week out. Cause then you can tailor, you know, a lot of our riders will say, we will send you the shopping list a week out. And that allows you to look at what's getting eaten and adapt it and tailor it for each show. If you see that like you had potato chips on your rider, you know, and they're never getting touched, ditch that. You know, it's like, it's a waste, but they're not healthy too. And pay attention, you know, pay attention to your rider. And if trashy, not healthy stuff isn't getting eaten, just take it off the rider. You know, like
it even goes further, you know, like shop your cleaning products for your buses, you know, get biological products for your buses, get recyclable toilet paper, get napkins, you know, ask for that as well at the venues, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
and if your bus driver is where you might encounter the most resistance, but ultimately, you know, you can make it aware to them that, look, this is important to my artist, so it's important for me, so it needs to be important for you as well, because this is, you know, they're our boss. And I think that's one area, not to get too deep into this, but that is really one area that needs to come next, is the bus companies need to get on side and start facilitating things. It's being able to have drinking water on the bus, you know, take out a closet and turn it into a water fountain storage.
If anybody has good ideas on how to recycle on a bus, put it in the chat, because I've been searching for that. You know,
we traveled with the big blue jug and had a dolphin pump, so we were able to fill the canteens up, and it's only $3 to fill up at Whole Foods. And
the recycling part is what kills me. You know, all the plastic or the beer bottles, it's still going down one chute into one trash can that's getting dumped, and there's got to be a better way than that.
So Fitzjoy, you know, we talked a little bit yesterday, and we always ask this question also in our conversations. Did you have any mentors coming up? And who were they?
Yeah, like I tried to think of some. I unfortunately was always like I'm a Taurus. I'm a little bit of a stubborn guy. I'm kind of like a, you know, fake until you make it kind of guy. And I was too proud to ask. So oftentimes, especially in my younger days, I prefer to like be proud and make the mistake and learn out of that rather than to ask. There certainly were tour managers that like I met along the way that I looked up to. Like Robert Bennett was one of the first ones. He was tour managing the Beastie Boys at that time. I was supporting that tour. That I looked up to. It's like, wow, like how does this guy run this? You know, so peacefully too. You know, because it was a very peaceful and kind environment for the 90s. Marty Holm, great guy that I'll call when I need advice on something. Unfortunately, one tour I was going to be able to be a tour manager under him, being a tour director. I passed on to do my own tour, to jump on that Katy Perry tour. And of course, like I have partners like my dear friend Jerome Crooks, you know, like we kind of like I met him on my first US tour as a promoter up in Austin, and then toured with him together on the Warp Tour in '96 or '97, where I met Mary Jo as well. And Mary Jo, you know, like I have a circle of close tour managers I'm very close to that I will actually call and send text. And sometimes right now, even like I go to younger people, I think I even send Henry Bordeaux now text like, hey, listen, like who do you go to for this or that nowadays, you know, like do you know somebody who would you, because like it's like I'm the old guy now, you know, like, and I maybe set a little bit in my ways, but maybe not, you know, like I gotta adapt, and I like to adapt. There's so much technology nowadays that like really does the work almost for you, that makes, and it gives you actually more time than any one of us would have ever had like 20 years ago. But yeah, like, you know, I'm making new friends right now, I hope, you know, like Mark here that I hadn't met before, and Doug Wilson, Adrian that I actually met like on my first
2003.
2002, yeah. For you were the working for the sports arena in Miami when we had a month rehearsals there.
That's right.
And I think that's a good point. It's never too late to learn, and never too late to sometimes mentors don't have to be older.
And the future is in the hands of the millennials, you know, like, and like they're the ones that have to come up with new systems, you know. How green can you get? Yeah, it's your world. You guys are gonna be out there longer than I am at this point. So like, you know, find new ways of doing things. And that will adapt, you know, like, I mean, like we've come a long way too, from like spending entire days off, like filing receipts, to now where I just like take a picture of my receipt, like store it right into a Dropbox that the accountant has access to, and like, I'm done. Yeah. It's like takes 3 seconds every single time I purchase something, even my hotel receipts, and they're all done by email now. And like right when from email, they get into the Dropbox, and you organize it by file names, and like, and it's done. And that frees up like an entire day off I have now, not sitting, putting receipts apart and highlighting stuff, and even having to type up reports and sending them to the accountant. No, like the accountant every day has my receipts of that day.
And you don't have to worry about losing them, which was the nightmare. Like, oh, so nice.
Find new systems. You know, there's these great apps now too. Like, who still makes tour itineraries? Come on, you know, like whoever still is printing those books, you're gonna be crazy. Like, there's free tools out there. Even Google Calendar, you know, it gives you all the information you need, and lets you update it every moment. There's new information available, and put everything there, and everybody's got everything they need to know. They even never have to even ask people like too many questions anymore.
This has been such an incredible webinar, and hearing your story has been amazing. I know that we were talking a little bit towards the end. If you can think of anything to give our students and leave off on, what comes to mind? I think we had talked about just being grounded was kind of a circumference of our discussion in your story.
Yeah, being grounded, be righteous, you know, like go by you can never go wrong with just feeling being righteous, you know, like in the early day of our society, you know, the society is like thousand, there's a wrong and there's a good, you know, there's a bad and there's a great, you know, like do the great, you know. Don't make it all about yourself. Just like you only get back if you give it everything out there, you know, and like I said earlier, like, yeah, if your parents are having their 50th wedding anniversary, just go take a day off, you know, be there, because that's your family, you know. And if you don't have a family, there's a best friend that's getting married, just ask the permission to leave. Have a great friend like my Jerome Crooks or Mary Jo that I could just ask, like, hey, Mary Jo, could you come do a weekend? And actually Mary Jo is going to be this next person for me, because like right now I find myself like with only 2-3 shows a week, but like I travel so much that it's so exhausting that like once in a while I need a weekend off, and Mary Jo is going to be this next person, or is going to be the next person for me that I can just call, like, hey, Mary Jo, I'm tired. Can you go to Vegas, or can you go to like London this weekend and do these 2 shows for me? Because I just need to rest. I just need to ground. I just need to be home for a little bit, no travel, and like get on the schedule.
Start up again, that's one thing that I've decided I'm going to do more of, is take that personal time. The last big like arena bus tour I did at the end of last year. It was about a 3-month tour. I left the tour 3 weeks before the end because my son was being born, and so I had the most amazing reason to leave the tour to fly home in time. And what I knew, I was like, that's going to be it. I'm going to walk away and I'm going to go be a dad. And so I gave complete power and faith to my entire crew, and everybody like came together and executed the rest of the tour flawlessly. And they were so great to like step up that it showed me that I could do that. I could actually take the time and step away. It didn't crumble, and it thrived. And so I learned that I'm going to do that more often when we start touring again. That I got to find that time for myself off the tour, if it matters. Yeah.
I think learning the art of delegation is a beautiful thing. And it shows you're a good manager. I'm not the greatest at it, but it's like, you look at how powerful it was for you, and you're like, you learned to delegate and you got to go home and be with your son.
I was the worst delegator ever. Like I think like Kim Hilton, like production coordinator for Katy Perry. I believe in the when I first came on, she came on as a road manager, and I wouldn't let her do anything because like I wanted to be so in control of everything. But like, give up the control and you'll find some more time for yourself. And you
give other people as well.
Stay in touch with your family and friends. Stay in touch with your family and friends, because that 2-year tour is going to end. And then you're going to come home and you're going to sit alone in maybe your nice little house you were able to buy with your tour earnings.
And also, finally, once again, it's okay to quit a job that is not suiting your personal ecology. Yeah. You do not have to stay trapped in a situation. If you have looked around and said, this fucking sucks, listen to what yourself has to say to you and figure out how you're going to unsuck it, because you deserve not to feel trapped in a situation that doesn't feel like it's doing you any good.
Yeah, and of course, when you're young, there's always, like I always say, like, the 20s is where you decide what your career is going to be.
And by the way, I'm a terrible quitter. So just, with all of that admonishment to not sell yourself down the river, I say that with all the weight of it, because I'm a terrible quitter, but I have learned to do exactly what Fitzjoy and what Henry and what Mary Jo and what everyone have said. It took me a hot minute, but you have a real life to live outside of going off on the gig. And I think that a time like now lets us realize that we're actually sitting in our regular lives, and what have we skipped out on, and what have we actually been present for?
Yeah. And like I want to say that there's of course a time where you gotta put 100% of your effort in it, especially on the build up, to make a name for yourself, to become and to establish yourself. But once you're established, then like 20s is where you really decide what you want to do. You want to be on the road. That's a decision you made. Who are you going to be on the road? Are you going to be a production coordinator? Are you going to be in production? Or are you going to be a party leader? Are you going to be a road manager? You're going to be an accountant? And then the 30s is where you develop that career. You develop like the skills, and like you really focus hard on becoming. And then by the time you reach your 40s, it becomes a little easier, because a lot of stuff just like they become part of your body. Like it's like a workout, like the first time hold the plank for a minute, you die. But like you do it every day, like at the end of the year, you can hold a plank for 15 minutes, no problem, easy. Your body knows like what muscles it needs to use, and like it grow, and you can just like drink a cup of coffee while you're in your plank. I know. And then the 40s is really where like you start enjoying the benefits, where like, you get easier gigs, like you get more to oversee things, because you learn now, you made all your mistakes, and you put all your efforts in, and you put in your sweat. And then you get to your 50s, and then your 50s is really where like it is like, grounding, really grounding, like really like put your own life and the rest of your life in front of everything else. Because like, what really touched me is like when like there was some point like I kept on seeing tour managers pass away, like, I mean, U2's tour manager passed away on the first day of the start of a tour, and I could just go for a heart attack, and I could just only imagine, you know, like you gotta take care of yourself. Know where your limits is and know where you have to take your breaks, and it's okay to take a break. All of us have taken breaks, and I believe also this time right now where we're in, I think, and you know, if contradict me if I'm not right, but like, I think this time here where we're forced to be at home, I think for most of us it's a very easy task, because it's a time to finally like, all right, I'm gonna chill, and like everything is gonna be okay, and no matter how long this takes, it's gonna come back, and I can deal with this because I have dealt with this before. I've had my 2014 where like I couldn't find a job if I wanted to. I've had like my 2000 or 98 where like the band I was supposed to go on tour with delayed their album with 6 months, and now all of a sudden like, and I wasn't really popular to be able to get any job I wanted or find like no many contacts to reach out to find the job. Where I was like actually like really worried about, you know, like how I was gonna get to that time where I could start making money again. So yeah, I think take time off whenever you feel like you're starting to lose yourself. It's okay.
That's what those
job will be there.
that's what those frequent flyer miles are for. If so, when you're done, when you find some time, you use those miles and those hotel points. And that's your vacation away from everything, you know.
Yeah, build on something else for later on. Like I in the beginning of my touring years in the U.S., I just had an apartment on Rossmore and Melrose, and every single time I came home, I felt like I needed to go somewhere, you know. So what did I do? Like when I finally get some money for a down payment of a house, I bought a little house in Silver Lake, and I made it a home. I really made it a home. So like when I came home from tour, I didn't need it to go anywhere else. I'm happy in my little neighborhood. I surround myself, build this place, like to like every single corner of this house is like a comfort. So when I come home, I don't feel like I need to run anywhere. I'm just so happy to be home here in my little neighborhood, in the community I built, also in the yoga world. So like, you know, do not put all your coins and or all your rocks in one bag. You know, let's make sure like there's a tour, and there's you, and your home, and your place, your safe place, and there's the moment.
Setting up a home for me on tour or after tour, setting up a home was super important to me as you're right, as I got into my 30s, because my 20s I was just a nomad traveling around forever. But having a home and saying, I would tell myself that this was, out of all the places I've gone in the world, this is my spot, and this is where I can exist and just sit on my couch and do nothing and be silent. And that meant a lot more into my 30s. You're right. So, but it sounds like I got more to look forward to as I get into my 40s. So great.
About this house, exactly when I turned 30, and like I was scared because like a commitment for at least 5 years buying a house, it's crazy, right? But like, you know, I paid my house off like crazy enough like last month, you know, and now I don't have a mortgage. I have always a place to go to. Wow. I don't have to go make those extra $2,000-3,000 a week by tour managing this pop star. I'm okay with like, you know, this, you know, a little less, you know, weekly. So
you know, since I've known you, I've always admired your demeanor and career in this industry. And so I'm so super happy that you came on and joined us today. Your story is really incredible, and I think everybody here has learned a lot. You know, this is one of the most important lessons we can share is about the life that we actually live on tour. And so, dude, thank you for joining us. This has been awesome.
It was great to see you.
Thanks for having me. And like, I'm really grateful that you guys started this to kind of like, you know, maintain like the memories of a past life and during this time actually, and knowing like it's going to continue. You know, it will be soon enough. We'll be wishing for another virus to, well, you know.
Okay, so that's all the time we have today.
Not that far, but like, I mean, sorry.
And you guys have a great weekend, all right? Hang up soon now.
Thank you for being here. for our 20th
Yes.
webinar.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
we got
our
a big
20th
thank you
webinar.
for everyone who's been a part of this, and we hope everyone's been enjoying the venue series. So we've got more on the way.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.